A message. They moved deeper into the village until Tilo noticed a scrap of cloth caught in the wreckage of a nearby cart. He tugged it free and held it up. It was a torn banner, the edges scorched, but the symbol was still visible, a raven with its wings spread wide. "What does it mean?" Nessa asked. Vireza stepped forward, her fingers tracing the edges of the symbol. "It's them, the ones who survived the Hollow King's fall. Those who still worship the storm. This isn't just a random attack. This is them telling us they're ready." Tilo scowled. "Great, just what I wanted to hear. Another cult to fight. But this is different," Vireza said, her tone hard. "They know about our powers, and they're planning something that could take us down." A glimpse of the enemy. Before they could react, the ground beneath them trembled. They looked up just in time to see a figure standing atop the ruined bell tower at the center of the village. A man cloaked in shadow, with eyes glowing faintly blue. He raised a hand, and the wind began to pick up again, swirling around them with unnatural force. "You should have stayed away," the man called, his voice echoing through the empty village. "The storm was only the beginning. The shards you carry are not yours to wield, and now you will pay the price for defying us." Brinna gripped her hammer, her muscles tensing. "Then we'll fight." Vireza, feeling the wind building again, raised her staff. "He's not the only one with power." Nessa disappeared into the shadows, her voice coming from behind the man. "You shouldn't have shown yourself." The man's lip curled in a cruel smile. "You have no idea what you've unleashed." With a flick of his wrist, the wind intensified, throwing shards of ice and splintered wood at them like projectiles. The first strike. The group reacted almost instantly. Vireza conjured a fire tornado, whipping it into the air to intercept the incoming projectiles, but the wind twisted the flames into a spiral that only weakened the force. Tilo, now fully aware of their enemy's power, focused his will and hurled an insult so sharp it sliced through the wind, freezing the man in place for a crucial moment. Nessa took the opportunity to blink forward, slashing at the man's cloak with both daggers. But he seemed to dissipate into the wind itself, reappearing farther away. "This is bad," Tilo muttered, keeping his eyes on the shifting figure. "We need to take him out now." Brinna swung her warhammer toward the man, but the wind formed into a wall of ice, deflecting her blow. "We need to get through that storm first." The real fight. The wind howled louder as the figure continued to taunt them. "You think you've seen power? You are the storm now, and we will break you." The storm had turned fully against them now, ice and lightning crackling together, a maelstrom unlike anything they'd faced before. Brinna planted her feet and raised her shield, keeping the worst of the storm off her allies. "We fight together." Tilo, his daggers flashing, darted in, dodging the wind and the ice to strike at the man's exposed flank. "You might want to stop with the speeches." Nessa, appearing behind the man again, threw a vial of smoke at his feet, blinding him temporarily. The moment his vision was obscured, Vireza sent a burst of lightning crashing into his chest. The man stumbled back, his form flickering for a moment, like smoke caught in a flame. He hissed in frustration, "You cannot win. The storm is me." The final blow. Vireza grinned. "You're wrong about that." With one last flick of her wrist, she created a massive thundercloud above them, crackling with pinpoint lightning. It struck with deadly precision, hitting the man directly in the chest. This time, he didn't recover. His body exploded into ash, and the wind died almost instantly, leaving only silence. Brinna wiped her brow. "That was too close." Tilo nodded. "Whoever's behind this is way more prepared than we thought." Nessa looked toward the horizon. "We've got a long road ahead, and they're not done yet." With the village now still and the storm broken, they knew they'd only scratched the surface of what was coming. But with new abilities, stronger bonds, and an enemy that had underestimated them, they were ready for whatever came next. Chapter 47. Shadows on the road. The wind had died, but the smell of smoke lingered. Snowflakes drifted through the air, settling on the ruins like a shroud. The four stood in silence for a moment before Brinna finally spoke. "We can't just walk away. Someone planned this attack, and they'll strike again." Tilo kicked at a scorched plank, revealing a burned satchel beneath. already one step ahead of you. He tossed it onto a half-collapsed table, and Nessa slid it open with a dagger. Inside were maps, detailed, precise maps of the northern trade routes, mountain passes, and major towns. Several were marked with the same jagged black circle they'd seen burned into the village wall. Vireza leaned over them. These aren't random. They're following something, a path. Nessa's eyes narrowed. A path that leads to this. She pointed to a mark far to the north, an uncharted area labeled in an unfamiliar script. The ink shimmered faintly, as if alive. The Raven's mark. Alongside the maps was a single scrap of parchment, folded with care. Tillo unfolded it to reveal a raven's feather pressed flat between the pages. Beneath it, written in sharp, precise handwriting, "The eye opens when the four winds meet. Bring the shards." Brenna frowned. 4 winds could be the 4 storms we've heard about in the old legends, one in each corner of the realm. Which means, Vireza said grimly, this was just one of them. Tillo leaned back, arms crossed. Great, 3 more to go. Do we at least get frequent hero points for this? A familiar threat. Nessa crouched low, examining the feather more closely. This isn't just any raven. Look at the edges. They're metallic. She flicked it with a nail and it rang like steel. I've seen these before. War messengers. Fast, smart, and impossible to track unless you know their master. Vireza's gaze darkened. You're telling me someone just sent us a calling card? Nessa nodded. And they want us to follow. The ambush trail. The maps also revealed another clue. A supply route cutting through the Frostglen foothills. Several spots along the path were circled in red, each one a choke point perfect for an ambush. Brenna set her jaw. If they're using those routes, they'll leave tracks. We follow them, we find their gaze. Tillo twirled a dagger between his fingers, and when we find it, Vireza's smirk was sharp. We burn it down, or blow it up, or both. Setting out, they left the ruined village behind, the trail of the cultists clear in the snow. The wind had picked up again, but this time it carried no magic, just the cold bite of the mountains. As they walked, Nessa vanished ahead to scout. Brenna kept the pace steady. Tillo muttered to himself about payment rates, and Vireza stared at the maps, her mind already racing through possible strategies. They all knew the truth. This was no longer about payment. Someone was moving pieces on a board far larger than they'd imagined, and the 4 of them had just been invited to play. Chapter 48. The Fortress in the Stone. The trail of bootprints bound higher into the Frostglen foothills, weaving between jagged cliffs and narrow ridges. The deeper they went, the quieter it became. No birdsong, no crunch of animal tracks in the snow, just the 4 of them and the whisper of the wind. Nessa reappeared from ahead, breath clouding in the cold. Found it, mountain fortress, cut straight into the rock. No obvious gates, they're using hidden entrances. And, she hesitated. It's built with us in mind. Brenna frowned. What do you mean? They've studied us. The approach is rigged with mirrored walls, meant to scatter and reflect light magic. The inner cliffs are laced with narrow kill zones that force us into single file, so no wargoat charges. And I spotted towers lined with runestones to disrupt teleportation. Tillo let out a low whistle. Well, that's flattering. Vireza's eyes narrowed. Flattering or not, it means they've been watching for a long time. We need a plan before we walk into this. The outer approach. The path Nessa had scouted was a narrow ledge carved into the cliffside. Halfway across, the stone beneath their feet shifted, not crumbling, but tilting, trying to slide them toward the sheer drop. Brenna slammed her shield into the rock, wedging it into a crack to anchor them. They're using shifting stone plates. Move fast. Vireza conjured a controlled fire tornado. Not to attack, but to push against the wind traps that were beginning to howl along the ledge. The heated air disrupted the currents just enough for them to move forward. Tillo, more agile than the rest, darted ahead, tossing a hooked rope to secure a safe path. Hurry it up. I don't want to be an icicle today. The kill zone. They reached a section of the fortress wall where arrow slits lined the stone in perfect staggered rows. A line of masked crossbowmen waited inside, already aiming. Nessa's teleportation fizzled against the runestone wards. She gritted her teeth in frustration. Can't blink through. Brenna hurled her wargoat forward with a shout, but the ledge was too narrow for a full charge. The beast lowered its horns, acting as a moving shield as bolts rattled against them. Tillo grinned wickedly. My turn. He leaned out just far enough to shout up at the defenders. I've seen more threatening crossbows in children's toys. The insult landed magically, freezing an entire row of archers in place for 5 precious seconds. Vereza used that gap to summon a pinpoint lightning strike, blasting the supports of the upper slit and collapsing the wall inward. Inside the fortress, they slit through the breach, finding themselves in a long, dim corridor. The air here was dry and warm, carrying the faint scent of oil. Too much oil. Trap, Nessa said immediately. A click echoed from somewhere above. Down. Brenna roared, shoving Tillo to the floor as the ceiling erupted in flame. The fire roared down the corridor, but it curved around them, sucked into narrow channels in the walls. Vereza's eyes widened. They're siphoning my magic, using it to power something deeper in the fortress. The enemy revealed. At the far end of the hall, a heavy door swung open. A figure stepped through, tall, armored in overlapping black plates and wearing a helm shaped like a raven's head. I've been waiting for you, the figure said, voice smooth but edged with steel. The Shard-bearers, the so-called heroes. You've been predictable. Brenna raised her hammer. And you've been stupid enough to let us in. The raven-helmed figure chuckled. On the contrary, you're exactly where I want you. Behind them, the breach they'd entered, sealed shut with a grinding of stone. Chapter 49. The cage closes. The heavy stone behind them locked into place with a final, echoing thud. The sound was like the closing of a tomb. The raven-helmed commander stepped forward, his armor whispering against itself. You're powerful, yes. But power without foresight, that's just arrogance. With a flick of his wrist, runes along the corridor walls flared to life, pale blue light that made the air feel suddenly heavy. Vereza's fingertips sparked once, then went cold. Magic dampeners, she said through clenched teeth. Nessa vanished, or tried to, only to reappear in the same spot, breath hissing in frustration. Teleportations blocked too. Brenna hefted her warhammer. Then we go old school. Tillo twirled his daggers. Fine by me. I'm excellent without magic. The commander's hand closed into a fist. Panels in the floor slid back, revealing narrow slots. With a hiss of steam, metal darts shot upward, timed perfectly to skewer anyone who moved too predictably. First Blood Brenna charged first, her war goat clattering down the narrow corridor with her behind it. But as she swung, the commander sidestepped with impossible grace, catching the hammer's haft in one gauntleted hand and twisting it free. He slammed the weapon's head into the wall, sparks flying. Tillo darted in low, aiming for a gap in the armor. His blade struck true, but instead of piercing, it rebounded with a sharp clang. All right, that's new. The commander's counter was swift, a backhand that sent Tillo tumbling into the wall. Improvisation under fire. With her magic suppressed, Vereza reached into the pouches at her belt, pulling free a handful of fine black sand. She tossed it into the commander's path. The grains clung to the damp floor, making his footing slick. Go, she shouted. Nessa moved like water, ducking low and rolling between the commander's legs. As she rose behind him, she hooked her daggers into the gaps under his shoulder plates, pulling hard. It wasn't enough to wound, but it shifted his weight, right into one of the floor's dart traps. A dart punched into the side of his armor with a screech of tearing metal. The commander staggered, but didn't fall. Turning the trap, Brenna snatched her warhammer from where it had lodged in the wall. If you're so clever, let's see how you like your own tricks. She slammed the weapon into the floor, sending a shock through the stone. The dart mechanisms rattled, then triggered in a cascading wave, forcing the commander back, step by step. Tillo grinned, limping slightly. Now we're getting somewhere. The mask cracks. The commander stopped retreating and planted his feet. Enough. He reached up and removed his raven-shaped helm. Beneath it was a man in his 40s, face lined by old scars, eyes an unnatural pale blue. You have no idea who you're fighting, he said, voice calm despite the chaos. We faced gods, kings, and worse. You're just next. Vereza's jaw tightened. Then maybe we'll start by tearing your fortress down around you. The commander smiled faintly. If you can survive the next 5 minutes.